Welcome to Tales from the Golden M. I am Joe Craig, the Emperor Skald. Last time the group spent a little time honing their skills aboard the Seaward Snail. Dandros grew one step closer to freedom. Lahti met with Sybrin Kythe and a deal was struck. The Pyro's Call also struck the Seaward Snail, leaving Jaina hurting in a bad way. How will she fare and what will come of the planned blockade? What of the Council of Edius and their meeting? Let us find out in this episode of the Calmbringer Cycle. Welcome to Tales from the Golden M. Episode 13, The Council. Jaina was hurting in a bad way. When they brought her below deck to take her to the hammocks, the ship's surgeon came to take a look at her. He was no divine healer. The snail couldn't afford one of those.
Hello, I'm Estero, the surgeon, aboard the snail. Let me take a look at your friend. She fought quite well against the follower of Callisto.
Estero was wearing a butcher's apron already covered in blood from some of the more badly wounded crewmen. His hands, however, were clean. He dropped the apron off, revealing the dark red button-down shirt that he wore beneath it, along with the black trousers. Estero washed his hands and pulled out a tool that allowed him to listen to the lungs a little better. Taking a listen to the badly injured side of Jaina, he was able to hear that the lung was indeed taking on blood. From his tool bag, he pulled out a large needle, in which he sterilized with fire, then alcohol, before stabbing it in Jaina's side. As he did, there was a squirt of blood, and then a smaller squirt. And with every labored breath she took, another smaller squirt. As the breathing got easier, the squirt of blood lessened. The surgeon listened to the lung once more, finding the immediate threat to Jaina's life was over.
She will need a healer. If we weren't so close to port, I would attempt a surgery to deal with that bleeding. But this should keep her alive until we can get her a priest to divinely heal her. Magic is more effective with this kind of injury than my skills. We will have to keep watch over her. If she starts producing more blood, we will need to conduct a surgery. If it remains slow, we should be good. If she wakes, her own divine magic will likely put an end to this whole worry that we that care about her are doing. Your Jaina will be fine. We will just monitor the blood flow and monitor for fever. Aside from that, all should be well.
With that being said, Estero rose. Washing his hands again, he collected the clean apron and then said,
Now, if you'll excuse me, there are others that need my services. I'll be above the deck if you need me. Wizard, you'll need sleep. Our little dervish here will need to take first watch over your friend. All will be well, but precautions must be taken.
Tying the clean apron and washing his hands yet again, the old half-elven man returned to the deck of the ship.
The surgeon is right. You need sleep, Regos. You look like you're more than half dead yourself. I'll take watch and I'll wake you when I'm ready to sleep. Good work out there. I don't think we would have defeated that monster without your aid,
Meg said while cleaning the blood from Jaina's face.
It was a team effort. Goes to show just how much we have to grow, though. He was the first but won't be the last. I'll get some rest. Wake me if her condition worsens.
Regos continued and climbed into the hammock at the bow of the ship.
As he went in to climb into his bed, he found it occupied. In his bed was that large black desert rain frog from the Dragon Roof Inn. Squeaky, what are you doing in my bed? Why are you back at the Dragon Roof Inn? With a yawn, the rain frog spoke.
What? You weren't using it to let me sleep in peace, please.
Well, I'm about to be. Let's put you in Jaina's bed. With that, Regos went to pick up the large rain frog. Though large for its kind, it still fit into two hands with ease. As he picked it up,
Put me down now! I want to sleep.
Regos put the black rain frog into Jaina's bed. The frog puffed up at Regos and let out a loud squeak. Regos tucked the little one in Jaina's blankets and let it burrow into them. With that done, he climbed into bed himself. The sun streaked into the window that shines on the face of Olan Durf, who rolls over with a groan. The sounds of the city bustling below. As the winds blow against the tower at this height, the tower sways ever so slightly, realizing the importance of the window being open without the shutters closed. Olan begins to force his eyes open. He hated large cities, but this was important. Oh, it's too early for this, Olan said to no one in particular as he rolled out of bed. His beard, the only thing keeping him modest. To keep from remembering just how far from the ground he was, Olan stayed clear from the window. In his chest at the foot of the bed, he dug out the garb that his wife packed for him for his formal meetings. It was a red tunic with brown leather trousers. He pulls on the clothes and then the boots. Splashing water on his face, he went over the facts that they had. The council will have to be convinced that the need is high enough to reform the military for the kingdom at large. Right now, it pointed to the small skirmish for the city of Droog. However, things are pointing to another war with the kingdom of Beldon. They were early in the warning, but did they have enough information? Leaving the room, he headed down to the common room to set aside for the council to get some food. There were several members of the council already present eating breakfast. Looking around the room, Olan remembered just why he hated these gatherings so fiercely. All the posturing and the false words, he couldn't do it. That's one of the reasons why he didn't fight Ethan for the right to do the job of representing the Dragon-Tooth Mountains. As he joined the table, he was greeted by none other than Jarl Tolfred Bordoli. Good morning, Olaf. I suspect you are the reason we are gathered. It is good to see you again after all this time. Olan knew what that really meant. With a grunt and a smile, Olan sat down across from Bordoli. Actually, it's for you that we are gathered. After all, it's your city that we're trying to protect. But I'll let Ethan get to the details for you. I hear you locked up the last dwarf that voiced concern for your city, so I better hold my tongue. Speaking of Ethan, anyone seen him this morning? He has gone ahead to the council chamber to get his presentation together with Vyden. Ethan must have thought this was going to be a hard sell to bring you along. It's always a pleasure to see you, Master Durf, said a sleek, tall woman with long, straight black hair with unnaturally green eyes. Her purple makeup matched her formal black and purple dress, which clung to her body. She was perspiring from the climate nearly as much as Olan was. With a bow, Olan gave a sign of reverence. No, the pleasure is mine, Madam Mandrift. To be in your presence is always a pleasure. Won't you join us? I could use some interesting conversation. How's your mother doing these days? Stepping to the table and pouring a goblet of wine for herself, she smiled with a toothy smile towards Olan. Well, she's a bit ragged these days, but very much in control of the eye. She's very interested in what you and Ethan have to say. She took a small, slow drink of wine, her eyes never leaving Olan's own. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable in the gardens. Would you care to join me? The air in here is stifling. I'd very much enjoy that. Let me grab myself a quick bite, and we'll be on our way. Olan said while grabbing some smoked fish and a goblet of ale for himself. Then he rose, eating one of the small fish in one go, and he smiled at the high cheekbone woman. Everything about her was slender and lean. She was tall for a woman. Her dress, though modest, and what flesh was being shown, wasn't handling the sweat all too well. Olan finished the second fish quickly and joined Alysha Mandrift as she walked towards the spiral staircase of the tower. Oh, thank you, my lady, for rescuing me from the pompous dwarf. I always appreciate you. Alysha smiled toward Olan. And I respect you. You aren't fit for the council, and that's a good thing. You're too honest with your feelings and opinions to flavor them with honeyed poison. If you are to give a poison, you give it honestly. I bet your children appreciate that about you someday. Perhaps not today. I bet your children will appreciate that about you someday. Perhaps not today, but when they're older. The odd pair walked down the stairs, with Olan a few steps behind, so he was not so short compared to the much taller woman. Upon the third landing, she stopped and turned to Olaf. Tell it to me straight, Olan. How much of what Ethan has been talking about is true? Are they back? With how out of character it was, Olan caught a little off guard. With how out of character it was, Olan was caught a little off guard. Yes, ma'am, they are. We're nearly certain about it. So certain that we called this meeting and came all this way. We have details to share. That's the short of it. That's why I asked about your mother and how she's doing. I know she would rather die than be subjugated to the treatment at the hands of the Sentinels again. With a slow nod, Alysha took in the words. This is why I appreciate you. Your honesty speaks to your character. Well, if you have more to back your claim, then rest assured that I will be behind you. Even if that idiotic Jarl isn't. Now how about we walk in the gardens? Now how about that walk in the gardens you promised me? It's far too hot here for my tastes. She turned with that word, not waiting for Olan, and continued down the massive spiral staircase. The interior of the tower was lit by glass tiles that allowed in light from the roof. The granite interior was polished. The hard stone stairs were softened by a deep blue carpet that was set on the center of the staircase itself. The stairs lined the inner wall, leaving a 20-foot diameter opening in the center of the tower. A statue stood at the base of the tower, reminding the people that were blessed, seeing the importance of the city of Kethos in the War of Callisto. This statue showed a gathering of the heroes of the calm. The marble statue was lit by lanterns powered by arcane enchantments that cycled through different colors to show the marble in these different lights. The marble stands The statue showed the gathering of the heroes of the calm. The marble statue was lit by lanterns powered by arcane enchantments that cycled through different colors to show the marble in these different lights. The marble stand on a plinth of an orange wood known as paddock, which broke the white from the marble and the pinkish brown of the granite. Stepping off the carpet, heading toward the garden, the high-heeled shoes clicked on the granite floor. Together, on even ground, the pair made quite the odd couple. Not another word was shared between them until the two were outside in the gardens. The ocean breeze made both of them sigh. I can almost stretch myself here. The only place in the city that I feel free. I know exactly what you mean. If it weren't for all the walls, and the people, this could be a beautiful place. Early in the morning, Dandros was active in the workshop. He was touching tools that he hadn't used in ages. A small chisel designed to do just what he was doing now. It was true, the hammer he created was not good for stone crafting. But it was still fragile when it compared to iron or steel. Why did he choose stone? Why did stone call to him? What was the reason for it? These were some of the thoughts going through his mind. That's when Bear Ironfoot dropped an item upon his desk that opened Dandros' mind. Bear dropped a rough-hewn chunk of obsidian on the table. They were notoriously fragile, until the hard center was found, where they were hewn just right. They were knapped wrong, the structure would be off and would break on first impact. There were other materials that were like this as well. Some would call crystal stones. I think you should work with other materials, my friend. Apply what you know to the stone of a different structure. It may call to you all the same. In truth, Dandros was the obsidian. He had been flaking over the years to find the perfect shape. It worked well for arrowheads, spear tips, and the like. It was incredibly sharp, but not so much a blunt material. Other stones were solid and didn't sharpen well. Dandros picked up the obsidian and found the challenge rewarding, so he began to knap the glass into a spear tip. There was a shape inside him as well. Dandros just had to find it. It was good to be back in the hall, where he kindled his love for Beldon once. He now sought that again. There was a fire that still burned in his chest. But that fire was not so bright as it once was. He now worked on stoking that flame, rekindling that relationship. Master Fingus Prattle came up to Dandros while he was focusing on the spearhead. Fingus examined his work that he had created. After only 2 days, Dandros was surrounded by things that he crafted. The one that Fingus spent the most time on was a child's toy made out of granite. It was a soldier on horseback. The detail was something that Fingus himself thought impossible to do with such a stone as granite. Dandros knew how to get every inch of detail out of the stone. There was a common motif to all the items that he created. They pointed to someone who saw trouble on the horizon. Children played with toy soldiers, pretending to be soldiers to grow up to be those soldiers. Then, they take up a weapon to fight an enemy. Dandros had made several weapons for someone to choose from. His mind was set on one thing, the coming threat. Interestingly, not a single weapon was made of metal. A stone dagger rests next to a wooden axe, sitting atop a pile of flint arrowheads, next to a bone short sword. All amazing works. Dandros had the skill to raise to rank of master. He just needed to find his faith to do so. Fingus inspected the bone sword when Dandros noticed him. Good evening, Master Fingus. What can I do for you? He continued to nap the spearhead. Taking the bone sword fully in hand. There's someone that I would like you to meet. To work with over the next couple of days.
And there is someone that will stop by to allow you to talk to someone that has an important ear in the city to describe this threat that you are so focused on.
Dandros stopped napping the spearhead, his spirits lifting. Very well. Lead the way, dusting himself off. He had been busy in the past day and a half, and it showed.
Your skill at crafting is a masterful work, by the way. Might I take this with us?
Fingus said while presenting a bone sword. Yes, by all means. Just something I was practicing with. I hadn't worked with bone in a while aside from a dagger I made from someone. Thinking back to Morris and just how much he would have loved a goblin bone dagger. He would have to use a rib, at least, if not one of the larger bones of the body to make it. It would have been grisly work. He just didn't know Maris that well. In the short time they were companions, he had really grown to like Maris. He still mourned for his passing to Necropus, and hoped that he found solace in the beyond. In honesty, he made the bone sword thinking of Maris. How many more friends would be lost before the end was in sight, he wondered. Fingus was talking, but Dandros missed part of what he was saying in his own musings.
He will be able to help you with some crafting.
Dandros assumed he would get that name when they met. Fingus was good at talking, and that was a fact that was not lost to Dandros.
I feel I may know your craft, or at least portion of that craft, and it's something that we haven't had in an age. I feel you may be a voresmith. It's a dying art, only kept alive by a few smiths to make sure the knowledge didn't die. Alas, there isn't a voresmith in full these days.
What's the difference between a weapon or armor smith and a warsmith? Genuinely curious about the conversation he was not participating in.
Well, to be frank, I barely understand what they are beyond a basic academic level. But from my knowledge, they combine foraging tactics with weaponsmithing and armor smithing, along with enchanting. They were what armies took with them to bolster the commanders and key personnel with improvised weapons, focused on key engagements. There are a difference between a battlefield medic and a priest, making do with what they have and making something exceptional out of it. A battlefield medic may not have all the glamorous tools, but they do just as much as a priest.
This is when and where Dandros met Master Corey Melchior, and his priest life was altered forever. Greetings, Journeyman Dandros of Smallwater. Beldon has told me of your coming. In Karos, the breeze coming off the Elgus Ocean was the only thing that reminded those from the north that winter was coming. The currents flowed south from the icy territory known as the Frozen Wastes, and with it came the bite of the north. It was still warm here, but to Ethan, Olan, and Dendy Virgil, it was downright hot. Dendy was a representative from the northern plains of Edius, a territory that kisses the Frozen Wastes and in some opinion becomes part of it during the winter. She was a halfling standing at the height of 3'2", with curly chestnut brown hair. Her big green eyes were framed by this hair. She was stout for a halfling and was dressed for the heat with a thin dress that framed, in her opinion, her best assets well. Upon entry into the hall, Ethan Eldos greeted Vyden Varfarrion. Vyden, I wanted to thank you personally for the aid that you provided us. It is quite the harrowing event that we faced. Shaking Ethan's hand, Vyden responded, "It's what we're here for. Thank you for alerting us to your need so we could provide assistance." With Ethan's arrival just before noon, that left the leader with the shortest walk, Elvantri Kethos, the representative from the Gulf of Edius. The council was comprised of a motley group, You had Ethan Eldos from the Dragontooth Mountains, Alysha Mandrift from the Dragon Eye Lake region, Vyden Varfarrion from the Great Falls Forest, Elvantri Kethos from the Gulf of Edius, Dendy Virgil from the Northern Plains, Commander Gerrick Droog from the Plains of Edius, Jarl Tofre Boldurli from the Undermountain region, Josef Mitchcoff from the Darkwood Forest, who was a Darkwood elf. Being outside the Darkwood Forest was a painful affair. His kind had adapted to the darkness of the forest. His pale skin was so pale you could see the veins below it, and his large pupilled eyes were now pinpricks. The final member was the tiebreaker many times, and not beholden to a region. In fact, they were part of the northern plains of Edius, but the counsel they provided was exemplar. This come from the Tower of Ydrix, in the form of the great Hierophant Sybrin Kythe. He was a religious leader for the worship of Ydrix, more than a wizard. In fact, he held no rank as a wizard, having dedicated his life to the worship of Ydrix. There was a mix of human, elf, dwarf, halfling, darkwood elf, and dragon. There was a representative from each of the populated regions of Edius, each with their own opinion on what was best for the kingdom. But as a whole, they had done well to grow the kingdom. After a bit more mingling, the arrival of Kethos marked the time for the meeting to start. He entered just as the sun reached the apex in the sky. As he entered, everyone went to their chairs to get the meeting going. Many of the council were curious to the nature of the summons, as it was so rare for such an event to transpire. As Kethos made his way to his seat, he called the meeting to order. As the chair of the council, for the purpose of keeping order to the chaos that would sometimes erupt in their meetings. This, the 26th day of Green Daire, in the year 300 after the calm, was brought for us by the heroes of the calm. I call this emergency council to order. This emergency council was called by the contingency from the Dragontooth Mountains, Lord Ethan Eldos. The chair acknowledges Lord Ethan Eldos to have the floor, and Lord Ethan Eldos rose from his chair to begin his speech. Thank you, Lord Kethos. Council members, I thank you for your expedience in which you have arrived for this urgent news. I do not disrupt your affairs without just cause. As many of you know, the cities of Chunda and Malatin were attacked by goblin raids. This news has reached you, I'm sure. The attack itself is not worth convening the council. However, the nature of the attack is. This raid was unusual in the nature of the goals at which the goblins were attempting to obtain. The raid on Malatin even happened on the calming day, 300 years to the day that the castle of Callisto fell from the sky. I say this to note the dates of the attacks were accurate, to say the least. The attack on Chunda would have marked the 300-year anniversary of the day that we sent the heroes of the calm to their fates. For these days to be marked by these anniversaries, I say they were planned. Beyond that, it was the nature of the objectives that the goblins had. Abductions of citizens, of which I am thankful for the aid of the Great Falls Forest was able to provide. Many lives were saved by that aid. There was theft of grain, beast of burden, and tools. Food reserves were hit harshly. All that on its own would be reason to pause. But the last few points are vitally important. Both Chunda and Malatin have reports of goblins with glowing purple eyes. Furthermore, we were able to capture a goblin leader in Malatin, and were able to question the beast. While in a circle of truth-telling, the goblin said the Skald of Callisto ordered the attack. Let that sink in for a moment. We were in a circle of truth, so the goblin believed his words to be true. The goblin even prayed for death after breaking and giving us this truth. This was before we entered into their nest. This was before we learned how true those words seemed to be. Into that nest went 5 heroes. One war priest of Hallis was amongst them. And it was her words that were relayed to us. They managed to rescue not only the people of Malaton, but also those from Chunda. They reported their findings to the commanding officer of the Great Falls Forest Contingency, Sir Gillard Tones, who sent word of the initial success. With that reinforcements from the Great Falls Forest, the heroes entered into that nest to rid it of the goblins that were there. And as they went into the central corridor, they were greeted by a horde of goblins retreating into the further depths, which were reported to lead to an old stone road. Also in that chamber was a woman losing her hair as it was falling out in clumps, with purple eyes that spoke in a commanding tone towards the goblins that were there. She gave a threat that the heart of the resistance shall be first to die. Adius was the heart of resistance. Be this being actually be the Skald, or a new threat with the same power matters not to me. That was a threat to destroy us. All of us. Based on the information gathered about the road in question, the road leads straight to you, Jarl Borduli. Jarl Borduli stood at the dimension.
Yes, I have heard these threats. No need to pull me all the way here to talk about these. If all the goblins of the Dragon's Mountains descended upon Durg would still stand. Our fortifications stand ready and have for over 3,000 years. This supposed threat matters not. Let them splash against our walls. Let them die a slow death of the might of the guards of Durg.
He finished this talk with his fist upon the table that the group of 9 were gathered around, and returned to his seat. And Sybrin then rose from her seat. Lest you all not forget that the walls of Geldstein stood for thousands of years before they fell. And in fact, Edia's city would still remain if their walls had held. If there's a powerful keeper, then my kind would be susceptible to their call. If she was commanding the numbers presented in your reports you provided, Lord Eldos, are accurate, then we are dealing with a powerful keeper. If what you fear is to be believed, then we are dealing with the most powerful keeper of the beast that Calidra has ever known. Most times, the truth lies somewhere in between. I cannot sit idle with this threat to my family at play. The Dragon's Eye will stand ready for what this council chooses. Josef Mitchcoff, the palest member of this council, then rose.
Your news did not come to a surprise to me either. I have seen some of the creatures of the Darkwood Forest make their migration north, almost as if they are led by the scent of a fresh kill. I fear for the city of Durg. We cannot, as a body, allow such a powerful city to fall. Would you not accept aid, Jarl Borduli?
With a laugh.
It would be pointless. Besides, I have already allowed for aid to the city in the form of a group of elves from the Great Falls Forest. Even now, they eat my food and drink my ale, enjoying the comforts of the city of Durg. There is no need for reinforcements to the city. And I say you're a fool for refusing the support. There's news that I've heard as well, just arrived this morning. Ships flying the flag of Devolton have been seen in the flow past White Harbor. How they have escaped notice before now, I do not know. But they were fast longships, like the dragoons would use. I fear Durg may be under assault or siege by the time we are done bickering about this, if we should send aid or not. These words came from the halfling woman, Lady Dendy Virgil. Taking order back from the group, Elvantri rose. Does anyone else have news to share about the threat of Durg, or any questions for Lord Eldos? The elderly human was dressed in a blue and red robes, then rose. I have questions trying to ascertain the nature of this threat. Have questions about the location of the heroes. Lord Ethan Eldos rose to answer. Jaina Krist, Megan Nevarro, and Regos Malbroach head to Durg as we speak. Their road is to take them from Chunda to White Harbor and then to Port Skara. Mars Starkscale died in combat with this skald. And Dandros of Smallwater, he should be in Durg with Captain Lahti. Pounding his fist upon the table, Jarl Bordoli stood again. Dandros of Smallwater west of my dungeons for questioning my wisdom and authority to rule. Many of us question your wisdom, Alysha said under her breath. But at the same time, Lady Dendy said, I have had no group of travelers reported by those names, but I can say for certain that if they have or hadn't passed through my gates and my docks. This prevented another outburst by Lord Bordoli. Stroking his long white beard, Master Kythe continued. Their road leads to Durg. Good. When you speak of this skald, she had hair, but was it falling out? Is that correct? Yes. Reports say that the body was that of a Chunda woman without the gifts prior to the goblins placing some kind of jar upon the chest of this woman from Chunda. The goblin described the process briefly where the skald awoke in the Chunda woman. Master Kythe paused in the stroking of his beard at the mention of this. Miss Jar, did they provide any other detail about it? No, they did not. Simply that it was a special jar that their people had kept watch over for some time. I have no idea what led them to use it now, responded Ethan. Again, Master Kythe began to stroke his beard, regaining composure. Now let the topic of the eyes. This skald, I assume her eyes were purple. How about glowing of the eyes? How bright was the glow about her eye? Lord Ethan Eldos thought back to the reports that was given, then spoke. There was no constant glow of the eyes. Only when she gave commands did they glow as per the reports that were given. Is that a good thing or ill? No, that is a very bad thing. We are dealing with a true keeper, likely one that was at least trained by someone trained by the skald. We can hope that this keeper is a powerful keeper and nothing more than that. The story of the jar concerns me. I feel we should treat this threat as if Callisto's skald is back, in my opinion. What of you, Commander Droog? The commander was sitting to the left of Master Melchior. He had gotten a little round in his position, doing more desk work than field work these days. His half-elven man rubbed his bare chin. I think your strategy is one that I would agree with. Treat the threat as if it were a dire threat. That way, if it turns out to be a minor threat, we will suffer little to no losses. And if we encounter exactly what we are prepared to face, we are indeed prepared. That is all very good, but you forget the fact that I hold dominion of Undermountain. I do not believe this is needed, Bordoli interrupted.
and Elvantri interrupted in turn. And you forget that if the council agrees, then we can reform the military, which your guards would become part of. How is Durg's defenses without manpower? This shut Berdoli up quickly. With that said, is there more discussion on the topic? Vyden, you have been quiet on the topic. Finishing his wine, Vyden rose. Of the council, only 3 of us were alive to witness the effects of Callisto and the Sentinels. Myself and Lord Mitchcoff are old enough to remember, and only I was old enough to fight them. I have seen them firsthand and fought them firsthand. I have heard the rumblings. Of distant oceans protect us from the threats of Callisto. None of this saved us when Callisto came knocking. He came with humans, elves, dwarves, halflings, and goblins. He came with monsters and beasts of Calidria. But all that paled in comparison to the Sentinels and their soldiers. Those monsters managed to enslave even the great and powerful dragons. Vyden's gaze fell on Alysha, who was barely a hatchling when Callisto was around. One of us was an infant when Callisto ruled. The rest of you have no idea what we are dealing with and the severity of the threat that even one of these things present. The Skald wasn't alone. It took more than her to control the beasts that they controlled. A powerful keeper can control a horde of goblins and a troll. A powerful keeper can even control an adult dragon. How would your fortifications hold against that, Master Dwarf? Vyden spoke with an authority that carried with it great weight. This weight kept even Jarl Berdoli in check. He walked to the front of the table. If what we have seen is true, then they are back. At least 2 of them. Karald yet lives. He escaped via boat and was not captured. Lincid's fate is unknown. The stories say that I mortally wounded her. I wish that were true. I wounded her gravely, but to say that I mortally wounded someone of that caliber, I believe to be a misnomer. So that brings us the possibility that we are now dealing with 3 of the 4. And finally, Harrow, again, whose fate is unknown. I feel that there's been more than enough discussion here. We have to take action. I move that we dedicate the rest of the time to the actions we must take. We have talked long enough, and that comes from an elf. It had been a few rough days for Jaina. As the month rolled over to Daima, it certainly was looking gloomy for her. They needed a priest to heal her, and would need a port soon. Meg and Regos were taking shifts, keeping a cool rag on Jaina's head. The fever was concerning. The ship surgeon did good work, but she was hurt bad. She was beyond the mundane healing that a ship could offer her. If only Jaina would open her eyes, she could heal herself. But she would not. Then there was the little meatball that was keeping her company, that would not leave her side. This black desert rain frog named Squeaky. Regos was genuinely confused by the frog. Meg found the thing quite cute, though it wanted to be left alone. Meg felt that creature was a comfort to Jaina. Regos was about deck somewhere, trying to determine how far out they were. The captain said they were arriving today. The healing salves that were used on Jaina stabilized her, but did not bring her back to consciousness. It was truly powerful medicine. Cuts healed in matters of hours, but ineffective against broken bones. Bruises would vanish, which was good. made her look good, but didn't touch the fever that held her. Regos had packed all their bags already. They were ready to go as soon as they docked. Any costs had already been settled. They even purchased a litter from the ship's surgeon to pack Jaina. No sooner than Meg had those thoughts, Regos burst into the captain. "Port Scar's in sight. We'll be at the dock within the hour. How's she doing? Any improvements?" "No, she's the same," Meg said while reloading the towel to cool her forehead. "The frog seems more concerned, however. What's the story with that thing anyway?" Regos laughed a bit. "Beats me. The thing's been in my bed. It's dragging roof in and it seems to have latched onto us. At least it sleeps a lot." With that, the rain frog yawned and nestled deeper into Jaina's armpit. "I think it's sentient. It talks after all." "Well, let's get her onto the deck so we can get her down the ramp and to a healer as soon as possible," Meg said matter-of-factly. Meg got her feet and Regos got her shoulders. They lifted her and laid her down on the litter. The rain frog squeaked at them for this disruption. They got her tucked in. Meg took Jaina's pack while Regos took the armor all bundled up on a rope. Well, except for the helm, which he thought no better solution than to wear the thing. Jaina's head was luckily the same size as Regos's, so it fit. Jaina's head was luckily the same size as Regos's, so it fit. Struggling, they moved the litter to the bottom of the steps before having to set it down. Captain Gillsby was laughing at them for the effort. "You know, you could likely hire a couple of lads from the crew to help you out with that to make it a lot easier. Well, we do have to reprovision, so we'll be at port for a day." Regos sighed. "I suppose that'll be for the best. You have any suggestions? She's not the lightest of things, nor is her armor." Smiling at them, "I would recommend Rex and Felix, honestly. Both of them have made some serious amount of coin betting on your little battles, so are quite fond of the lot of you. Besides, they need to get out of into the city. Otherwise, they will start trouble. It would be a favor to me, as well as a favor to you." By the time the ship was at port, negotiations were had and agreements were made. Rex and Felix were packing the litter and the suit of armor that Jaina normally wore. As soon as the ramp was in place, they were off. Regos ran ahead, asking the harbor master where the closest temple with a decent healer was. Harbor Master Korax Crow pointed them to the Temple of Hallis, noting the vestments that Jaina bore. Port Skara had a busy port, mostly dealing in the catch of the day by the time the Seaward Snail made port. People haggling over the catches, new nets and spears created a bustle that Regos had no time for. He had seen many a soldier with these symptoms, and the prognosis was grim without divine aid. Moving through the carts, wagons, and the massive bodies that made the dock function, the group was on their way, Regos carving a path for them. He had a gift for getting people to listen to him somehow. And to do it without threat was another thing. Even the call for rare tobacco didn't dissuade him from his goal. He knew that a priest was the only thing that would keep Jaina from Necropolis' gates. At last they reached the Temple of Hallis of Port Skara. As they went inside, Regos shouted, "A little help here! Please, we need a priest!" Jaina was packed in, and the priest waved them over to a spot near the statue of Hallis that the temple held. It was the more short and squat version of Hallis that many found to be the more accurate version of the deity, instead of the tall, slender, beautiful one that most temples chose to show. The priest came over and began to take a look at Jaina. "We did what we could with the ship's surgeon and healing salves, but she needs divine magic. Will you help us?" Regos said to the priest, not bothering to with introductions or the like. The priest likewise got right to work, not bothering with asking about donations to the temple or any negotiations. Saving a life was imperative, a fact that both priest and Regos had agreed upon. The priest was a halfling man with short curly red hair. He was at odds with the blue and silver that he wore. He was a pale man with green eyes, heavily freckled face. The priest laid hands on Jaina's forehead and cured her fever first. Then he worked on healing her broken bones that she had. There were many of her ribs that were broken. Her collarbone and even her shoulder was shattered. It took the priest a good bit of work, but at the end of it, the man simply said, "Well, she sleeps now. Rest is the only thing that she needs for her body to finish healing. Now that is done, welcome to the Pauldron of Hallis, Port Skara. I am Priest Podge Holdren, chief priest over the temple here. I've traveled with the War Priest of Hallis. Who are you, and what else can I do for you?" Meg introduced herself, and Regos did likewise. They simply said they were en route to the city of Durg, as danger was coming. It was late in the evening by the time the priest was done. They would stay at the Pauldron of Hallis tonight, while Jaina rested. Then they would be on to Durg in the morning. They would be in the city of Durg by noon, so close to their destination. Lower Corner, Keepers of the Beasts.
The great lord brought the creatures to heal, and the keepers kept them there. He gathered the herd, we tended the flock. He sowed the seeds, and we nurtured them. Our minds are his. May Callisto reign forever.
The keepers' song to Callisto. The Keepers of the Beast were what they were officially called. However, the populace knew them only as the Keepers. They were gifted men and women that were skilled in either magic enough to keep the spells in which Callisto had the beast under control, or were psychics skilled at the art of influencing and beast control. Keepers were beast handlers as well, and ensured that these creatures were happy enough, thus easier to control. Many of these people believed in what Callisto led his followers to believe. They believed that he was building a world where beasts would no longer be slaughtered by the droves and driven to extinction. Many of these individuals cared deeply for the beasts they tended to. War was horrible. However, it was needed to stop the ultimate destruction of the beasts. However, there were other keepers that were not fooled into such happy thoughts. They were in it for the true cause. These beasts were a sign of power. They were an untapped army that, if given direction, could destroy any foe. These keepers were men and women after Callisto's own black heart. It was these keepers that Callisto ensured lived well and would live long, regardless of their race. The strong and pure should live on and forever and never die. Callisto would speak these words as a rally cry before heading off into battle. Keepers are a very interesting lot. They wore no weapons and needed no armor. They wore simple black robes with no symbols, emblems or jewelry to mark them. They would be known by the beast at their side and the look in their eyes. I have no need for my voice, for the beasts will roar for me. Words of the keeper. And travelers, that's where I will leave you. So many questions that we have now. The Council of Edius has convened, but the vote must be cast. Will Edius be on time to prevent the machinations of the enemy? What are these ships from Devolton, and what does it mean for the people of Durg? A priest works on Jaina, but was it in time, and how long will she sleep? And has Dandros found his craft, and will that be in time? I want to thank Adrian Von Ziegler for the privilege to use his music to make the story all that much better. For this month's travelers, I have made a clear mushroom soup. Think of that soup you get at a hibachi place before your cook gets going. You can find this recipe up on patreon.com already. With that said, I want to thank you for listening. If you wish to support the podcast, a rating where you find the podcast would mean a lot, or a simple thumbs up in the YouTube space, or a subscription if you really like it. If you want to support a bit more and get the recipes of Calidria in your kitchen, as well as additional lore content, please support me over on Patreon. That's patreon.com/goldenimpn. Signing up will give you access to our Discord server. I hope to build a great community over there. I can only do that with you. So won't you join us and join the conversation? And if you want to follow me outside the podcast space, you can find me on Blue Sky at Impish Skald. I am Joe Craig, the Impish Skald. Thank you for listening, and remember, you've been scalded.